الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله النور بسم الله نور النور بسم الله النور.
All right, let's dive into some real wisdom today.
Sounds good.
We're going deep into the book on virtue of knowledge from Al-Kafi,
Okay.
which, as many of our listeners know, is this incredible collection of, teachings
Right.
from Prophet Muhammad and the Imams.
Yeah.
So it's we're getting this direct line to some of the just profound thinkers in Islamic history.
I think what's really cool about this section in particular is how relevant it is to us today.
Oh, yeah?
How do we approach religious authority? How do we deal with new ideas, new interpretations? How do we make sense of information when it seems like it's conflicting?
Right.
It's really like a masterclass in critical thinking.
I love that.
But with a spiritual twist.
So we're time traveling basically through these teachings, hearing directly from the Prophet and the Imams.
Exactly. Think of it as a curated collection of wisdom passed down over generations.
Awesome.
And we're going to be focusing on a specific range of hadiths here, starting with Hadith 153, Chapter 18, Hadith 1, all the way to Hadith 208, Chapter 22, Hadith 12.
All right, I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Let's do it.
Where do we begin?
Okay, well, let's just jump right in.
Okay.
Chapter 18 tackles this really interesting concept of taqlid.
Okay.
Now, for those who might not be familiar with that term, it essentially means following religious authority.
So trusting the scholars, following their rulings.
Yeah, but there's a nuance here that Imam Abu Abdallah brings up in Hadith 153, Chapter 18, Hadith 1.
Okay.
He's interpreting verse 9.31 of the Quran,
Right.
which talks about people blindly following rabbis and monks.
Yeah.
And the Imam is warning against accepting rulings
Okay.
without understanding the reasoning behind them.
So it's don't just follow blindly, engage your brain.
Yeah, it's about having an active faith, not a passive one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And Imam Abu al-Hasan actually echoes this idea.
Okay.
In Hadith 154, Chapter 18, Hadith, he's comparing the strictness of taqlid practiced by the Murji'a group,
Okay.
who believed that actions didn't matter as long as you had faith,
Right.
with that of the Shias,
Okay.
who emphasize both faith and action.
So it's not just about blindly following.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind the what.
Yeah.
And then putting that understanding into practice.
Yeah, and this brings us to a crucial point. Islam encourages critical thinking.
Right.
It's not about shutting down your intellect.
Yeah.
It's about using it to deepen your faith.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Good.
Damn, I'm curious, what other gems of wisdom
Oh, there are so many.
are hidden in these chapters?
Well, things get really interesting in Chapter 19.
Okay.
We dive into the dangers of innovations, personal opinions, and using analogies when it comes to matters of faith.
Interesting.
This is where Imam Ali just drops some serious truth bombs.
Right.
In Hadith 156, Chapter 19, Hadith 1.
Okay.
He warns about how deceptive innovations can be, how they can blend truth with falsehood.
Right.
To mislead people.
That's so relevant to our current times.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Think about all the misinformation, the conspiracy theories floating around. It's so easy to get caught up in something.
Yeah.
That sounds really convincing.
Right.
But isn't actually rooted in truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why having a solid foundation in knowledge is so important.
Right.
And Prophet Muhammad in Hadith 157, Chapter 19, Hadith 2, reminds us that, when innovations emerge, scholars, they have a duty to speak up and share their knowledge.
So it's like a call to action, almost.
It is a call to action.
Yeah.
It's a call to action for those who have knowledge, to be responsible with it, and to guide others.
It's not just about acquiring knowledge for ourselves.
Right.
It's about sharing it and protecting the community.
From falsehood.
Absolutely. It's a collective responsibility.
Wow.
And the Prophet doesn't just stop there.
Okay.
He also warns about the severity of elevating those who promote innovations.
Oh, wow.
In Hadiths 158 and 159,
Gotcha.
Chapter 19, Hadiths 3 and 4,
Okay.
it's really a serious matter
Yeah.
with consequences both in this world and the next.
It's like he's saying, be careful who you follow and what you believe.
Exactly.
But on a more hopeful note,
Okay.
Hadith 160, chapter 19, Hadith 5, talks about like divinely appointed figures
Yes.
from the prophet's family who will rise to defend the faith against these very innovations.
Yeah.
So even amidst like all this, darkness, there's a promise of light.
There is.
And guidance.
That's right.
Okay, so we've talked about like the dangers of blindly following,
Right.
the need to be wary of innovations.
Mm-hmm.
But what about when we encounter like teachings that just seem
contradictory, confusing? How do we like navigate those murky waters?
That's where Imam Ali steps in with some serious wisdom.
Okay.
In Hadith 161,
Right.
chapter 19, Hadith 6.
Gotcha.
He's really critiquing those who disguise their personal opinions as knowledge.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that true knowledge is about seeking understanding,
Right.
not just winning arguments or sounding impressive.
Oh, it's so true.
Right.
Sometimes people can be so eloquent,
Right.
and charismatic
Yeah.
that we're just like swept away by their words, even if those words lack substance.
It happens all the time.
It's like he's saying, look beyond the surface, examine the core.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes even when we think we're being logical, we can fall into traps.
Right.
Hadith 175, chapter 19, Hadith 20 talks about this.
Okay.
It tells the story of this exchange between Imam Abu Abdallah and Abu Hanifa.
Yeah, I've heard about this one.
Yeah.
Didn't the Imam use like the example of Satan
He
to
did.
demonstrate his point?
He did. It's a brilliant analogy because it shows how even seemingly logical reasoning can lead us astray if it's not grounded in divine revelation.
Wow.
Satan tried to justify his disobedience to God by using a flawed analogy.
Right.
And that's precisely what the Imam is warning us against.
It's like, don't let your ego trick you into thinking you're smarter than God.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, this is all so insightful, but I have to admit, like, sometimes I feel overwhelmed by like the sheer volume of Islamic knowledge out there.
Sure.
It's like, how can we possibly grasp it all?
Well, that feeling of being overwhelmed is actually addressed in Hadith 169, chapter 19, Hadith 14.
Okay.
It tells the story about Ibn Shabrama,
Okay.
who possessed vast knowledge, but lost it all because of a sin he committed.
So it's like a reminder that knowledge is a gift.
Yes.
A blessing.
Right.
That can be taken away if we don't like value it.
That's right.
Or use it responsibly. But this hadith also mentions the concept of al-jamia, which is like this comprehensive book dictated by Prophet Muhammad to Imam Ali, containing knowledge on every matter.
It's amazing.
So does that mean that like all the knowledge we need
That's a great question.
is actually accessible?
And it leads us perfectly into chapter 20.
Okay.
Where the focus shifts to the completeness of the Quran and the Sunnah as sources of guidance.
So we're talking about like the foundational texts of Islam.
Yes.
How do these chapters shed light on this idea of knowledge being accessible?
Well, Imam Abu Abdallah states very clearly in Hadith 178, chapter 20, Hadith 1, that God has revealed an explanation for everything in the Quran.
Wow.
There's no excuse for claiming that something is missing.
It's like he's saying, the answers are there. You just have to seek them out. It's so empowering.
Yeah, it is empowering.
To know that we have access to like such a complete and comprehensive guide.
And Imam Abu Jafar in Hadith 179, chapter 20, Hadith 2, goes even further. He highlights that God has revealed in the Quran everything the Ummah needs and has explained it through his messenger.
So it's not just about like the words on the page. It's about understanding those words through like the lens of the Prophet's teachings and the guidance of the Imams.
Exactly. And to really drive home the point about the comprehensiveness of divine guidance, Hadith 180, chapter 20, Hadith 3, talks about how even seemingly minor issues have limits and guidelines set by God.
Wait, so you're telling me there's divine guidance?
According to Imam Abu Abdallah.
For even like the smallest details of life.
It's mind-blowing to think about
the
level of detail and care that God has put into guiding us. It's like every aspect of our existence has this spiritual dimension.
I'm starting to understand why this book is called the Book on Virtue of Knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not just about information.
Right.
It's about understanding like the profound connection.
Yes.
between knowledge and our relationship with God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that connection becomes even more apparent as we move into chapter 21, where we tackle this delicate topic of conflicting Hadith interpretations.
Oh, this is something I've always struggled with.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Like, how do we possibly reconcile teachings that seem contradictory?
Right.
It can be so confusing.
It can be.
Yeah.
But Hadith 188, chapter 21, Hadith 1 offers some insight.
Okay.
Imam Ali sheds light on the different types of Hadith narrators.
Right.
And the reasons why discrepancies might exist.
So it's about understanding the human element in the transmission of these teachings. Yeah, it reminds us that these hadiths were passed down through chains of narrators and variations can occur along the way.
Of course.
Like a giant game of telephone.
Exactly.
Right.
But here's where things get even more interesting.
Oh.
Hadiths 189 and 190, chapter 21, Hadiths 2 and 3.
Okay.
Introduce the concept that hadiths, just like verses in the Quran, can be abrogated.
Wait, what does that mean?
Right.
Does it mean that some hadiths are no longer valid?
It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
It means that sometimes a later hadith might supersede an earlier one, or a hadith might be specific to a particular context that no longer applies.
So it's not always about one hadith being right and the other wrong.
Right.
It's about understanding the chronology and the context.
Precisely.
Okay.
And sometimes the Imams might even give different answers to the same question. This is explained in Hadith 192, chapter 21, Hadith 5.
Okay.
So
that seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does, right?
Yeah, why would they do that?
Well, remember that the Imams
right.
were often operating under immense pressure, facing persecution, threats to their lives.
Yeah.
So they sometimes used strategic ambiguity to protect themselves and their followers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like they were playing a high-stakes chess game with their words.
Right.
But doesn't that make it even harder to know
it can.
What the right interpretation is?
It can seem that way, but Hadith 193, chapter 21, Hadith 6, offers some reassurance.
Okay.
Imam Abu Abdallah emphasizes that even when their answers seem different, the Imams speak nothing but the truth.
So it's about trusting their wisdom, even when we don't
fully understand
their method.
Their methods, exactly. And to make things even more practical, Imam Abu Abdallah gives us some really helpful tips on how to approach these conflicting narrations. This is in Hadiths 195, 196, and 197.
Gotcha.
He suggests prioritizing later rulings, following the newest information, seeking guidance from knowledgeable individuals within the community, and most importantly, aligning with the Quran and the Sunnah.
It's like he's giving us this roadmap for navigating the complexities of Islamic knowledge.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that perfectly sets the stage.
It does.
For our next segment.
It does.
Where we'll delve deeper into this importance of the Quran and Sunnah as our ultimate guides.
Sound good.
I'm ready for more.
All right.
This has already been so insightful.
Good.
It's like we're peeling back layers of understanding, uncovering the richness and depth of these teachings.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, me too. It's been great.
All right.
Okay.
Good. Welcome back.
I'm hooked. These teachings are like a breath of fresh air.
Oh, good.
It's challenging us to think critically.
Right.
And engage with our faith on a deeper level.
Exactly. And as we move into chapter 22, the focus shifts to the Quran and the Sunnah as our ultimate yardsticks for evaluating any piece of information, any teaching.
So we're talking about the bedrock of Islam, the sources that hold the highest authority.
The foundation.
But how do we ensure that our understanding of other teachings aligns with these foundational texts?
Well, Imam Abu Abdallah makes it very clear.
Okay.
In Hadiths 197 and 199, chapter 22, Hadiths 1 and 3, he states that any hadith that contradicts the Quran should be disregarded.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The Quran is the literal word of God.
Right.
So it follows that anything contradicting it cannot be considered authentic.
Right.
But what about the Sunnah?
Yeah.
How does that fit into this?
Well, the Sunnah, which encompasses the Prophet's sayings, actions, tacit approvals.
Right.
It's our guide to understanding and implementing the Qur'an's teachings.
Okay.
And it's given significant weight.
Okay.
In Hadith 201, chapter 22, Hadith 5.
Okay.
Where Prophet Muhammad himself urges people to verify any hadith attributed to him against the Quran.
It's like he's saying, don't just take my word for it, check it.
Exactly.
Against the ultimate source.
That's a powerful statement.
It is. It's a powerful call for intellectual honesty.
Yeah.
Critical thinking.
Absolutely.
It's about approaching our faith with an open mind.
Yeah.
And a discerning heart.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but what happens when we encounter teachings within the Sunnah that seem to differ or even conflict?
Yeah.
How do we reconcile those apparent discrepancies?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something that scholars have grappled with for centuries.
Right.
Fortunately, Al-Kafi provides some guidance on navigating these complexities.
Okay.
Remember those hadiths we discussed earlier about abrogation?
Right.
Same principle applies to the Sunnah.
Okay.
A later practice of the Prophet might supersede an earlier one.
Right.
Or a particular action might be specific to a certain context.
So it's not about blindly following every single action attributed to the Prophet.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the context, the chronology, recognizing that the Sunnah evolved over time.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's about using our intellect to arrive at a nuanced understanding of the Prophet's teachings.
Sure.
But beyond this, Al-Kafi also introduces this fascinating distinction between two types of Sunnah.
Okay.
This is in Hadith 208, chapter 22, Hadith 12. Imam Ali explains that there's a Sunnah related to obligatory matters.
Okay, so we're talking about the essential practices of Islam.
Yeah, the pillars of faith, the things we must do
to fulfill our obligations to God.
Exactly. But then the Hadith goes on to say there's also a Sunnah in non-obligatory matters.
Oh, interesting. So there's a hierarchy within the Sunnah.
There is.
Itself.
Yeah.
Some actions are essential.
Yes.
While others are commendable, but not mandatory.
That's right.
How do we distinguish?
That's a question that requires careful study and guidance from knowledgeable scholars.
Right.
But the key takeaway here is that the Sunnah encompasses a wide range of teachings and practices.
Yeah.
And we should strive to follow the Prophet's example to the best of our ability, recognizing that not every aspect carries the same weight.
It's a call for balance and wisdom.
Yes.
In our approach to following the Prophet's example.
Absolutely.
It's not about being legalistic or rigid.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about striving for excellence while acknowledging our human limitations.
Absolutely.
I feel that's a theme throughout this.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a theme.
Okay. But before we dive into more details.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You said that chapter 22 emphasizes the Quran and the Sunnah as our ultimate yardsticks for evaluating information.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on what that means in practice?
Sure.
How do we actually use these texts
to
navigate the sea of knowledge?
That's a fantastic question.
And opinions out there.
It's about developing a critical lens informed by the Quran and the Sunnah.
Right.
So when you encounter a new teaching, a new interpretation, ask yourself, does this align with the core principles of the Quran?
Right.
Does it resonate with the Prophet's example and teachings?
So it's not just about accepting something blindly because it sounds good.
Exactly.
Or because someone in authority said it.
It's about engaging with the knowledge.
Right.
Comparing it to those foundational texts.
Okay.
And seeing if it holds up under scrutiny.
It's like developing a spiritual filter.
It is.
That helps you sift through all the noise.
Yeah.
Discern truth from falsehood.
And this process of critical engagement is beautifully illustrated in a hadith from Imam Jafar. Hadith 205, chapter 22, hadith 9.
Right.
He says, there are no words without action.
Okay.
There are no words or actions without intention. And there are no words, actions, and intentions without learning the Sunnah.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
It seems to be saying that our faith isn't just about, like, what we say or even what we do, but about, like, the intentions behind our actions.
Yes.
And how those intentions are shaped by the Sunnah.
Exactly. It's about aligning our thoughts, words, and deeds with the Prophet's example.
Right.
It's about embodying the essence of Islam in every aspect of our lives.
Okay.
And this alignment is crucial because, as Imam Jafar highlights in Hadith 206, chapter 22, Hadith 10, our natural inclinations can lead us toward both truth and falsehood.
So we have to be careful.
We do.
Right.
He states that everyone experiences both excitement and calmness. But the key is to ensure that our calmness leads us toward the Sunnah, not towards innovations.
So it's about channeling our emotions.
Yes.
In a way that, like, aligns with the Prophet's teachings.
Yes.
Our moments of peace and tranquility should, like, guide us back to the Sunnah.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Not away from it.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that even our emotions can be influenced by external factors. And we need to constantly check ourselves and ensure that we're not being swayed by, like, fleeting desires or misguided impulses.
Yeah.
And if we do find ourselves straying from the path, Imam Jafar offers a simple yet powerful reminder. In Hadith 207, chapter 22, Hadith 11, whoever may transgress against the Sunnah must return to the Sunnah.
It's a call for humility.
It is.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes.
Of course.
We all, like, stumble at times.
We do.
Right?
Yes.
But the key is to, like, acknowledge those missteps and realign ourselves with the Prophet's teachings.
Yes. It's about recognizing that the path to spiritual growth is a continuous journey of learning, reflection, and course correction.
This is so profound.
It is profound.
I feel like we've only, like, scratched the surface.
There's always more.
Of this, like, treasure trove of knowledge.
There is. In our next segment, we'll delve into some of the practical implications of these teachings, examining how they can guide us in navigating contemporary challenges, making sense of the complexities of our modern world.
I'm eager to see how these principles, like, translate into practical guidance.
All right.
Awesome. Okay.
Good.
I'm ready to keep going with our deep dive into the book on virtue of knowledge.
Great.
This whole conversation about, like, the Quran and the Sunnah being our guiding lights.
Right.
It's really resonated with me.
It's like a powerful concept.
It is, but, you know,
Yeah.
It's one thing to like talk about these principles in theory, but it's another to actually like apply them in our daily lives.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm wondering if you could share some like practical takeaways from the book on virtue of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Like how could these teachings help us navigate the challenges and complexities of like our modern world?
Well, throughout these chapters, we've encountered these recurring themes that offer like timeless guidance.
Right.
For example, in chapter 18, we discussed the concept of taqlid.
Right.
And the importance of not blindly following religious authority. This principle is like more relevant than ever.
I feel like it is.
In today's information age.
Right.
Where we're just bombarded with diverse opinions and interpretations.
That's like Imam Abu Abdallah was giving us a crash course in critical thinking like centuries ago.
He was ahead of his time.
Right. Preparing us for a world where we'd have to sift through mountains of information to find the truth.
Exactly. It's about developing that like discerning eye, that ability to question, to analyze, and to ultimately arrive at an informed understanding based on solid evidence. And this leads us to another crucial takeaway from chapter 19, where Imam Ali warns against innovations, personal opinions, and flawed analogies in matters of faith.
This is a message I feel like we need to hear constantly. I mean, with social media, the internet, it's so easy to get swept up in trends, opinions that sound convincing, but might lead us astray.
Right. And that's why it's so crucial to constantly refer back to the Quran and the Sunnah, as emphasized in chapters 20 and 22. These texts serve as our like anchor, our compass in a world that's constantly shifting and changing.
It's like having that like solid ground beneath our feet.
It is.
Right. That like unwavering reference point.
Yes.
That helps us make sense of like the chaos.
Absolutely.
But sometimes, even when we're trying our best to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, we encounter like conflicting interpretations or teachings within our own communities. How do we like navigate those differences without falling into judgment or division?
That's where the teachings from chapter 21 become so invaluable.
Okay.
Remember those hadiths about abrogation?
Right.
And the Imams' strategic responses to questions?
Yeah.
They remind us that Islamic knowledge is complex.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted
right.
and sometimes requires like a nuanced understanding.
So it's not always about like finding the one right answer.
Right, exactly.
It's about acknowledging that like different interpretations can coexist.
They can.
And sometimes the wisdom lies in like understanding why those differences exist.
That's a good point.
Right.
And in those situations where we're unsure about which interpretation to follow, Imam Abu Abdallah offers some practical advice.
Okay.
In Hadiths 195, 196, and 197,
right.
He suggests prioritizing later rulings, following the newest information, seeking guidance from knowledgeable individuals within the community, and always aligning with the Quran and the Sunnah.
It's like a roadmap.
It is.
For navigating those like gray areas, those moments where we need to exercise like both our intellect and our humility.
Absolutely.
But beyond these specific like pieces of advice, I think there's this overarching theme in the book on virtue of knowledge that speaks to like the very essence of how we approach our faith.
What would that be?
I think it's about recognizing that our like understanding of faith, it's not static. It's an ongoing journey.
It is.
Of learning, reflection, refinement. It's about being open to new insights.
Right.
While remaining grounded in like the foundational principles of Islam.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about embracing that dynamic tension between tradition and interpretation.
Right.
Between seeking knowledge and acknowledging our limitations.
Right. And ultimately, I think the book on virtue of knowledge reminds us that like the pursuit of knowledge isn't just like an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's a deeply spiritual one.
It is.
It's about like deepening our connection with God.
Yes.
Understanding his will. Aligning our lives with his guidance.
Beautifully said. As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. Inspired by Hadith 208, Chapter 22, Hadith 12, which discussed the two types of sunnah.
Right.
How can we, in our daily lives, differentiate between the sunnah in obligatory matters and the sunnah in non-obligatory matters?
Right.
And how does this distinction guide our actions?
That's a question worth pondering.
It is.
And it's a reminder that like our journey of learning and self-discovery never truly ends.
That's true.
There's always more to uncover, more to understand, more to integrate into our lives.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey.
My pleasure.
Through the book on virtue of knowledge. I feel like I've gained
Correct.
A whole new level of appreciation for like the wisdom and guidance contained in these teachings.
I'm glad, remember, the true value of knowledge lies not just in acquiring it, but in applying it to our lives in a way that brings us closer to God. It makes us better human beings.
Until next time, may your pursuit of knowledge be filled with light and guidance.
Thank you. Same to you.